Horrifying commercials, whether unintentionally traumatizing or completely intentional, have been airing for decades. While some become iconic staples, revisited time and time again in creepy compilations, others go forgotten or lost, with nothing but vague recollections shared amongst the internet. Public service announcements, which are ads meant to raise awareness, are frequently bizarre and unsettling because they can deal with much darker themes. Today we'll be diving into strange PSAs that were once lost media, but ended up resurfacing. And now you can finally watch them. Before we get right into it, I've been trying to sort out my terrible sleep schedule. I must admit that today's sponsor, Manta Sleep, is helping me do that. They make all kinds of sleep masks and other accessories that let you get the best rest possible. You can adjust parts of the masks to your comfort, and they completely block out light. I struggle with waking up and feeling alert in the morning, so I love to pair their silk mask with the cool eye cups. It reduces eye puffiness and is super soothing. You pop them in the freezer for about an hour, then attach them and relax. If you listen to music or ASMR while you go to bed, the sound mask is also very cool. It connects to any Bluetooth device and plays anything you want. Go to mantasleep.com or click the link in the description to look over the wide array of products they offer, and use code SomberDeBogly for 10% off. There is a 60-day money-back guarantee if you aren't satisfied. Now, let's get right into it. The prominence of anti-drug campaigns emerged in the 80s and carried on into the 2000s. Companies visited schools to warn that evil, scary strangers would try to give out a free supply and to just say no. There were pencils with a slogan that, when sharpened, sent the opposite message. And of course, a flood of PSAs. Some of these faded into obscurity, and were never preserved despite people's memories of them. The one we're discussing was aimed at young children in the early 2000s, and was remembered by many before it resurfaced. Let's rewind to when it was lost, starting in 2018. Reddit user Deadly Comics recalled the ad, and was wondering if someone on the Lost Films subreddit had it archived. The post read, "I'm really curious if anyone else remembers this. In the early 2000s, there was an anti-drug PSA on PBS Kids. Every time it came on, I remember having to run out of the room. In it, there was a giant robot being fed on a conveyor belt until it eats a spiky ball labeled drugs, followed by an awful metallic sound of the robot breaking down." A while before this post, they tracked down an article about it that contained a screen cap, giving us proof and a glimpse of the off-putting ad. Although they saved the image at the time, they were never able to find the article again, and assumed it was removed. OP wrote, "Reverse image search returns nothing, so this is the only evidence I know of it existing." They detailed it was produced by Film Roman, the studio that also produced King of the Hill, The Simpsons, and a bunch of others, and that it might have been called Inner Workings. Someone suggested emailing Film Roman, but they already had and were waiting on a response. 3 months later, a user asked, "Any luck?" But it was radio silence. Deadly Comics did have an update though. They figured out that the creator was Eric Radomski, who joined the studio in '98. His website states, in 2001, Radomski directed an animated public service announcement for the Partnership for a Drug-Free America, entitled The Works. This gave us the official title, a confirmed time frame, and the organization's name. This resulted in articles being dug up, most from January 2002, which is when The Works began airing. AnimationMagazine.net reported, Film Roman engages children with a combination of playful, industrial rhythms and a whimsical depiction of the human body working as a well-oiled machine. I somehow don't think whimsical is the proper descriptor for this. Adweek.com gives a rundown. The animated ad shows a fellow whose body has been cut away to reveal his insides, which comprise various gears and gadgets. To a percussive, clinking soundtrack, he downs burgers, milk, veggies, fruit, and bread via an assembly line leading to his mouth, and then eats a spiky object marked drugs. Suddenly, his body shuts down, and then collapses. "Drugs can really break your body down," says a child's voiceover. Another Reddit recount did say, "Some creepy-ass voice is like, 'Drugs can break your body down. It's freaked me out since I was a kid. Literally never seen it again. Half convinced I ate some acid and hallucinated it, but not sure." Evidently, the PSA did not work on them. In April of 2019, Eric said he too remembered it, and would check for it in his archives. But this didn't go anywhere. It wasn't until April 12, 2021, when GH32143 uploaded a 10-second version of it. The full ad is 30 seconds. It's missing the part where the robot eats burgers, but shows it collapsing. In August of that same year, Fry's video archives realized they were in possession of a second incomplete version of the ad. Fry noted, "It's still partially lost, but at least you can see the mechanical dude eat milk and fruits. The burgers remained elusive." Finally, on September 28, 2022, that Brandon guy was watching a YouTube upload of old Cartoon Network commercials. 12.5 minutes in, there it was.
Break your body down.
This was posted in September 2018, 3 months before the first mention of trying to find it. It was hiding on YouTube the entire time. Fun fact, the sound effect that plays when the food goes into his stomach is used in Mario 64. This next entry is especially horrific, even if it doesn't initially sound that messed up. A lot of lost media is described with such intensity and honestly oversold, then we finally feast our eyes upon them, but they aren't that bad or scary. In this case, it's the opposite. References of this advertisement were scattered around the internet for years, but it turned out to be worse than expected. In April 2021, user ChimereArc asked the Philippines subreddit if anyone remembered a creepy commercial, believed to have aired in the early 90s. They were unsure if it was advertising a product, a PSA, or what it was for. The only thing they could recall was imagery of this creepy little beaten-up doll that's being squashed by a hand. That's the only visual, accompanied by a narrator or something. Despite the minimal information provided, OP wasn't the only person who remembered it. A few commenters chimed in with their memories, and thought it was a PSA about child abuse. A user suggested one by Bantai Bada, a social welfare program that aims to protect children. Albeit similar, this wasn't it. What this person saw was of an actual doll being squished, and not animated. Here's another recollection in the comments. There's a beaten-up doll against a wall, violet/darkish background. A girl can be heard crying while her dad is beating her up or shouting at her. A few months later, ChimereArc, who also goes by, I don't know if it's Archie or Arky. The username makes me think it's Arky, but I might be pronouncing both wrong. But they posted about it in the Spooky Advertisements Facebook group. Someone replied, "I'm glad to say that you're not the only one. There are other posts here that talk about that specific ad during the early days of this group. Sadly, we can't seem to find it. It was given the placeholder title, Ripped Doll, and was speculated to have aired between 1997 and 2002. by OPS-PIA, a government agency. Later that year, Archie returned to the group, this time with a mock-up of what it looked like. Pardon my crude MS Paint drawing, but the visual is kinda just like this. Just a hand squeezing a poor tiny doll. They're totally downplaying their art skills, but no amount of recreations or descriptions of the PSA could have prepared me for how disturbing it really is. I almost didn't want to include it in this video because of how painful the crying and screams in the background sound. Out of nowhere, on June 20th, 2022, Franstendo 64 stumbled upon it accidentally. It was sitting unsuspectingly on YouTube since January of 2019, with barely any views.
Tingnan mo mga bata. Umiiyak sa kalupitan. Nasasaktan. Napagsasamantalahan. Humihingi ng saklolo. Itigil ang pang-aabuso sa mga bata. Nasa kamay mo ang kanilang kaligtasan.
By far the most upsetting that we'll talk about, and I can't listen to it without feeling uneasy. Let's take a little trip back to Japan in the 70s. Sometimes when residents would be watching TV, all of a sudden, an ad like this would play.
警察庁からのお願いです。梅内恒夫、24歳、爆発物取締罰則違反の容疑者、身長176センチ、痩せ型、やや猫背、この顔見たら110番。警察庁からのお願いです。永田博子、26歳。京浜安保共闘強盗傷害の容疑者身長150センチ丸顔浅黒くてギョロ目この顔見たら110番警察庁からのお願いです坂口博25歳京浜安保共闘強盗傷害の容疑者身長176センチ眉毛が濃いこの顔見たら110番
Now, this is a recreation, not the real thing. Because the commercials that those across Japan remembered and feared were completely lost for 50 years, give or take. In February 1970, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department introduced these most wanted suspects interjections to the public. The intent was to bring attention to prolific criminals, listing their physical attributes and what crimes they were suspected of, hoping someone in the area would recognize their face and be able to tip them off. These continued airing throughout the 70s, possibly into the 80s and 90s. In the 2000s, when internet forums and message boards were booming in popularity, mentions of the commercials made their way online, because people wanted to see them again. They had these eerie memories of watching cartoons as kids, then seeing the PSAs. Broadcast interruptions have a way of feeling jarring and out of place. One minute they were watching whatever program, then the next, heinous illegal acts were being listed off, and reminding you they were on the loose. These are auto-translated, so my apologies if there are any errors. September 25th, 2003. About 25 years ago, there was a commercial that said, "If this face rings a bell, call 110. Does anyone remember it? The bulging-eyed man in that commercial, someone from the Japanese Red Army or something, was really scary. I still think about it sometimes. October 8th, 2004. The black and white blurry picture, the sudden sound of the police car, and the impersonal narration were all really scary for me as a child, so I covered my ears and screamed along with my brother. July 6th, 2016. I was really scared of this when I was little, and I would freeze up in fear when it came on. The sound of a police car siren would go off, and a close-up picture of the wanted criminal would appear. Does anyone remember it? The various testimonies have things in common, like someone with a missing pinky finger, or a man with alleged bulging eyes, and crimes having to do with explosives. 2 people remembered one about an incident where a bomb was put in a Christmas tree, which sadly was a real event that happened in Shinjuku on Christmas Eve 1971. While hunting for the lost PSAs, newspapers that covered the ads were unearthed. They showed photos of their faces with descriptions of them and their crimes. The National Police Agency is now soliciting the faces of wanted suspects for TV commercial spots. The faces of violent criminals will be shown in large size on TV screens, asking for cooperation with the question, "Do you know this man?" It may be a translation error, but this article says, "His hair is scary because it floats." For decades, not a single one of these PSAs could be found. Even once these newspapers were discovered, it still took years for anything to show up. But on October 25th, 2023, YouTube channel 1977 Pop uploaded an episode of Ginza Now with commercial breaks. And this marks the first ever wanted suspect ad to see the light of day.
警察庁からのお願いです。加藤三郎29歳、爆発物不法所持の容疑者、身長165センチ、鼻の左にほくろ。この顔にピンときたら110番。
Someone from 2009 recalled this specific man, Kato Saburo. He and his girlfriend had been hiding since New Year's Day 1978, after accidentally setting off an explosion at their Tokyo apartment, while in the process of handling a homemade bomb. Police finally caught them in 1983. When this was found, a Twitter user shared it with the caption, "So nostalgic. I remember when I was a kid, there was a Satoshi Kirishima version of this, the Bug-Eyed Man edition, and it was so scary that I couldn't go to the bathroom alone at night." An article from the 70s says, "His eyes are bulging out," or "he has big bulging eyes," about a different guy, so it's unconfirmed if Kirishima is the bulging eye man that has been referred to, but it's certainly possible. There's no telling how many of these mysterious clips are lost. A commenter says they saw one while watching Chibi Maruko-chan, indicating they were still airing in the early 90s. Although only one out of who knows how many others has been found, I still wanted to include it in this video. We can only hope others resurface. There is a deep, dark history behind hazing that dates all the way back to the Middle Ages. Tragedies have been happening for the longest time. Hazing is most associated with Greek life, when fraternities and sororities make people perform degrading, humiliating, or dangerous acts in order to be accepted. It's illegal in some places, but that doesn't stop it from happening under the radar. One such tragedy happened in 1991, when Leonardo Villa, known as Lenny, lost his life during an initiation rite at Ateneo de Manila University. There was a public outrage, and people wanted justice for Lenny. This eventually led to the Philippines passing the Anti-Hazing Act of 1995. Hazing wasn't illegal in the Philippines until 2018, but this regulated it, so to speak, making physical harm and violence prohibited. Around this time, there was a PSA having to do with it that really stuck with those who saw it, due to how visceral it felt. In a 2016 r/Philippines thread asking about unforgettable commercials, someone mentioned "Karne ka lang sa hazing," or "You're just meat and hazing." Sorry if I butchered that. Saying, "It gave me nightmares back then." It takes place in a dark room, and a person who is out of view tosses a slab of meat on a table. They pull out a 2x4 and start pounding it with it. All the while, in the background, there are sounds of a man writhing in pain. The last hit spurts blood on the wall. They added, "Caught me off guard when I was 9 and watching alone at supper." That same user in a different comment cited it as one of the Philippines commercials that scared them the most, and that the setting looked like a dimly lit morgue. Kids don't exactly expect to see meat being pounded in a morgue while they're watching TV during dinner, and I don't know how that would ever fully leave your mind. It was brought up in Facebook groups that focus on spooky advertisements and Philippines advertisement history. Although it was talked about multiple times throughout the years, the footage itself was nowhere. Coincidentally enough, Decadent Treble, the user that commented on those Reddit posts, is who successfully hunted it down. This was their own white whale after seeing it as a kid, and was a reason they were inspired to become an archivist. After amassing a vast collection, they found it in their tapes on June 13th, 2024, and uploaded it roughly a month later. It's quite repulsive and nauseating. I completely understand why they wanted to put the stomach-turning childhood memory to rest. In March of 2006, an Internet Archive user posted to a forum asking about a hemophilia awareness PSA. Hemophilia is a blood clotting disorder which typically causes excessive bleeding from injuries. This is another from the 70s, and Bill DP thought it was called the House of the Hemophiliac. This was, without a doubt, one of the most frightening PSAs I have ever seen. I would literally jump up and change the channel if it came on. Anyway, I was wondering if anyone knew of this PSA, and if so, can it be located for viewing anywhere on the net? Over a year later, in November of 2007, someone replied, "That's so weird if it's the same commercial I'm thinking of. It gave me nightmares. I'd be curious to see it again." In 2009, NYTV fan on a blog spot for New York Media Nostalgia wrote, "An actual PSA, or was I imagining it? What I remember is it had a scary voiceover that began by saying, 'This is the house of the hemophiliac.' We'd get these distorted, twisted handheld camera shots of the house, with zooming close-ups of things like scissors and a cat scratching at the camera, because those things could make the hemophiliac bleed and possibly kill him. All the while, as we are getting these crazy images, you'd hear some demonic, childlike laughter in the background. I hated that PSA when I was a kid, but would love to see it again to see what my reaction would be." And in 2010, another person would turn to the internet recounting the unnerving ad. One that really stayed with me all these years. There was a commercial that was for raising awareness on hemophilia. It showed a camera closing in on this house, seemingly empty of trees and grass. And there was a narration about it being a house of horrors to a child with hemophilia, because it was filled with things that could put him in the hospital. A weird musical piece played as the door to the house opens, and the camera zooms in on a pair of scissors on a table, and a butcher knife on the counter, etc. It was really freaky when I was little. Once the lost media community heard about this, they started looking in all corners of the internet. Searching for House of Horrors, Hemophilia, Hemophiliac on Google Books turned up a transcript for it, along with 2 other commercials that were produced. All were made for the National Hemophilia Foundation. The clotting factor had already been on YouTube since 2016. However, House of Horrors and the other entitled I'm a Hemophiliac didn't appear to be available anywhere. On December 19th, 2024, Popper Hilton found The House of Horrors hidden in a PSA compilation on myfootage.com.
The House of Horrors. To a hemophiliac, his own house is a house of horrors, where anything can make him bleed and send him to the hospital. But the most horrible thing of all is that we finally have a way to control his bleeding, only he's not getting it because he can't afford it. The only way he's going to get it is if you give it to him. We need your money. We're so close, yet so far.
Just 2 days later, they realized I'm a Hemophiliac was in a different compilation on the same site.
I am a hemophiliac. You know, the people who can't stop bleeding. Watch. Don't worry, it's nothing serious. But a year ago, this could have put me in the hospital. Now my bleeding is under control because of a thing called a clotting factor. I was lucky. They picked me to test it out on. And for a year, I've been living and bleeding like a normal person. But getting it to the thousands of other people who need it is another story. It's very expensive. The only way they're going to get it is if you give it to them. We need your money. We're so close, yet so far.
It took a long time, but at last, they were retrieved and archived online. I can see why all of them left an impression on those that saw it. I hope you enjoyed this video. When it comes to lost commercials, it's usually only a matter of time before it's discovered that they were sitting on YouTube, or someone recorded it on a tape from way back when. I thought it'd be fun to share some unsettling ones that were found. Be on the lookout for more videos like this in the future, and thank you.